I was admitted to my dream school, but was unable to join, just like many of us share in the financial constraints. So I found myself in a local college called Lambo Lakeside College, where we were supposed to do a bit of carpentry, a bit of welding. But somewhere the proprietors decided that we can as well be registered to undertake the Form 4 certificate, KCSE. So somewhere I got registered, and in 1996, I did my Form 4 certificate and qualified to join the university. I joined Kenyatta University to undertake Bachelor's of Science degree in biochemistry, and then graduated in 2002. And thereafter quickly joined the master's. Actually, I graduated my undergraduate from a master's class. I pursued an MSc in biotechnology at Kenyatta University again. And soon thereafter, after defending, I had an opportunity to leave this country through a scholarship by the Rockefeller Foundation to South Africa, University of Cape Town, where I did a PhD in molecular and cell biology, which was focusing largely on the genetic engineering and GMO. So it's a very interesting area as well. As soon as I submitted my thesis and went through the rigors of that, I got an opportunity again to cross over to the UK at Pfizer to undertake a postdoctoral research in drug discovery. I was sponsored by the WHO, World Bank, UNDP, and UNICEF for that. And interestingly, Madam Chair, when I was doing my PhD, I got interested in communication. So I did certificate in science communication just to understand how to communicate a little bit more. And when I was also doing my postdoc, I got interested in forensic science, which was in line because I was already a DNA person. I decided to also do a postgraduate diploma, what we are calling graduate diploma in forensic science at Blackford Institute in the UK. And then in 2011, I got back to this country and took up a faculty position at Kenyatta University in the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and biotechnology. But shortly after, the same year, 2011, I realized that it was too much back-to-back science. I needed to break it down. So I went to USIU, United States International University, to do an executive master's of management and organization development. And I'm happy to report that I was privileged to have been awarded the best student in that course, probably because it wasn't my stronghold. So thank you for that, and probably try to link up my expertise and probably what am I bringing in to IEBC. Madam Chair, election is a national exercise and it's very critical. It might interest us to know that currently I serve as the board member of Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and I chair the technical committee of that board, and also privileged to sit in the Finance and Administration Committee of the board. And one thing very interesting, Madam Chair, is that in 2019, we can recall that we had housing and population census, which was conducted under my technical supervision as the chair of the technical committee, and it was done on a digital platform, which I probably, if time allows, I'll ventilate on how the nitty-gritties of that. And it was largely successful. It was probably one of the censuses that we released basic results within 2 months and 3 days. That was unheard of because the previous one in 2009 was released after 1 year. So that competency, patience, the rigors that is required to undertake a national exercise, which is closely, more or less related with IEBC. There are a bit of parallels. This one happens after 5 years. The other one happens after 10 years. It has all the political fire in it. It has all the rigor, the planning, and everything else. That competency is what I want to give an opportunity to transfer to the IEBC. Madam Chair, again, I sit as the Director of Research Support and Dissemination. This is the fundraising arm of the university. And I would be happy to note or to whisper to your ears that just last year alone, right now, the university have managed to solicit or secure 996 million Kenya shillings, which is closer to $1 billion under my watch and leadership. This is a skill that I would really want to give an opportunity again, together with my fellow commissioners, be able to identify, apart from the traditional sources of funding currently as they are for the IEBC, what are the non-traditional and the newer opportunities that are out there that we can also bring in to help out in terms of resource mobilization. Madam Chair, again, I served from 2011 to almost to 2015 as the first member of the accreditation committee at the KENAS, which is Kenya Accreditation Service. This is a body that is responsible for accreditation of the conformity assessment bodies so that they certify processes. Madam Chair, election is a very sensitive matter, as we are all aware. And my thinking is that probably if I can bring the best practices in terms of certifying the processes of IEBC. For instance, we know we have ISO 9001, and I hope that IEBC clearly probably is ISO certified. But what I would propose would be the ISO 17065, which is a third-party attestation that takes care of the processes. You certify the processes, you certify the products, and the services rendered. And because this is an election, probably the magic lies in there, in the processes, because they are not certified, because it comes with a lot of what I would call a lot of finesse and efficiency when your processes are certified. So, Madam Chair, again, I want to bring in the expertise in research and innovation. And this is very critical because election is a very sensitive activity, and it requires a lot of planning, a lot of research planning before that, and issue-based and data. Also the eye for innovation. IEBC right now is establishing a digital platform. We are aware of what is going on there. But that ability to see what is the right technology to be brought in on board, what are the efficiencies that come with that technology? Is it researched? Is it that precision that comes with being a good researcher is something that is very critical in planning at the IEBC. Madam Chair, it might interest us to know that in 2017, I was one of the 52 scientists in Africa who was celebrated and awarded as the best scientist in Africa by the Department of Science and Technology, as those researchers who are doing cutting-edge research that have a lot of impact for the continent. And also, Madam Chair, in terms of communicating that research, because communication is one aspect, again, that is required. Apart from the training that I hinted to as the certificate level, I have over time, also through even the training for the management and organization development, have been also awarded ably in different fora. In 2009, I was awarded as the best poster presenter in South Africa. And in 2012, again, I was awarded in Addis as the best oral presenter in that thematic area of the drug discovery and the computational chemistry that was in there. And of course, Madam Chair, I participate in a lot of the stakeholder engagement, which is an aspect that I want to bring on board. I happen to also chair the Kenya University Biotechnology Consortium. It is a caucus, a consortium that brings together experts in biotechnology and modern biotechnology, to be more precise, in how do they undertake responsible research. And this is involving negotiation. Remember, I'm talking about responsible use of modern biotechnology, Madam Chair. Here, we're talking about GMO and whether the country is ready to accept it. And because we are in that phase and we have legal frameworks that allow that, what I'm expected to do as the chair is to sensitize the political wing, sensitize the scientists themselves, because they have an opinion on this and what they think is right. And of course, the farmers, the youth, and I have been involved in a number of stakeholders, including with the Bunge la Wananchi, which, if given time, again, time allowing, I'll be able to ventilate on. Madam Chair, IBC is a multi-sectoral commission, requires multi-sectoral arrangements to effectively deliver on its mandate. And I have expertise in negotiation and nurturing collaborations. In 2013, again, I led my university through my department to have our lab, which is the only biosafety laboratory in this country and in East and Central Africa in the universities, to be affiliated to one of the international organization called ICEGB, International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. And up to now, that lab only in Kenyatta University is the only lab affiliated to ICEGB. Actually, they are now in the process of having a regional center of excellence, and that call, again, we've sent in our bid and looking forward to having that done. All that put together, Madam Chair, allow me just to say one last thing, probably, that I've got this eye for innovation and ability to look at it at the right time. And this is attributed to the fact that I'm a patent holder with the World Intellectual Property Organization, where I patented one of very unique systems for stress-inducible, which is a technology that will be required should you want to improve plants and any germplasm for purposes of accepting the genes from different sources. This is a bit technical for now, but the reason why I'm bringing it in is that how do you then, while as a commissioner, bring that uniqueness in understanding that yes, this technology is not even going to work now, or it has chances and possible areas of weaknesses could be here. This is an aspect that I would want to bring on board, and I'm very grateful if I will be given that opportunity. To sum this up, Madam Chair, I know that we are constant on time. And for that reason, otherwise we would have been given the opportunity to do a 5 minutes of PowerPoint presentation of our ideas. I've sneaked in a 3-point switch strategy in my certificates, which I hope will be circulating around. And what I've done there is I have picked up 3 critical points that I feel that if given the opportunity to persuade fellow commissioners would be ideal. Artists if I join the team. And it looks at, if you allow me, just 3 things. Re-engineering the electoral technology services that will be focusing on reducing the cost and process efficiencies. And I am able to ventilate more on that if given time. And of course, to look at the perception and trust, which is an aspect that is critical, needing to look at the image and the credibility of IEBC. And the last bit of it is the section that looks at the financing, which is an aspect of what is the sustainable aspect of sources of finances that would be a little critical. This was just for your eye, Madam Chair, and probably for the fellow able panelists to also probably interrogate going forward. It is just an aspect of what I think, which will blend very well with the rest of the stuff. Otherwise, Madam Chair, I intend to present a combination of the benefit of a long-standing service expertise coupled with the advantage of recent knowledge. When you're ready, Madam.
Thank you so much, Prof. Allow me to ask you if you are a registered voter.
Yes. Madam Chair, yes, I am a registered voter. I started voting in 2002 at Jamhuri Primary School, then moved to Kenyatta University Primary School. Then currently I'm registered at Mlolongo Primary School. Yes, Madam.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. I will now request Mr. Morris Kimuli to ask you a few questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Professor, you speak good English. Who taught you English?
I really don't think that it's good. I struggle with my English, really. I do.
You know, you've been a scientist and speak in English, we used to be taught that science teachers have no business with good English. And a friend of mine called Isika Maswili used to tell me that his English never went beyond no sooner. And so you'll forgive many of us whose English never went beyond no sooner.
Thank you so much, legal expert.
Now, you just indicated that you are actually a board member with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics.
That's correct.
Now, just briefly, what kind of statistics developed or gathered or generated by the Bureau do you think are relevant to the work of the Commission?
Thank you, Mr. Kimoli. The Bureau, being the default setting and the custodian of official statistics, is a very critical resource that the Commission can really benefit from. One thing that the Bureau does in the statistics is to, first of all, give the number of people who are 17 years of age who are supposed to join to become 18 years. And this means that's the age bracket for voting. And this, if you check, I bothered to look at that data really. And from 2015 to now, it has been 1 million, like in 2015, it was 1 million, 2017, 1,047,000. And similarly, 2018, 2019 to now. That data, which tells the Commission of the number of people crossing to the voting bracket, is very critical in planning and in realizing that what is important for IEBC to effectively deliver on its mandate. Because how do you plan for voter registration without getting to know what is the number that is expected to actually join the bracket? Mm-hmm. So that is very critical. Yes.
Is that the only aspect of statistics IEBC could use?
No, there are quite a number. When you do population census like the one we did earlier on, and if you succeed to do the basic volumes, one of the volumes is critical in terms of giving demographics of a population, in terms of the population density, in terms of the gender, in terms of socio-economic, in terms of who the disabled, for example, who are the females in there. And this is important in terms of preparedness, even at the polling center. If you want to know how many brailles to put in there, where do you get that data? It is from us. And also the information, which is equally critical, is that bit around the projection of the birth rate. Because it's also projected based on the migration, based on the mortality, and then you get the fertility. That is how you will get to know how many people are likely to give birth. And that is important because that is what is feeding into the ultimate people or numbers that will be voting. So we've got all that in there.
Now, why would IEBC require information regarding those who are turning 18? If you turn 18, do you automatically become a voter?
No. But you are eligible to register and become a voter.
Now, are there any legal prerequisites before IEBC registers anyone above 18 or 18 as a voter?
Registration to become a voter is voluntary. And therefore, there is no legal requirement for you to register as a voter.
So what I'm asking is, if you, I can't remember, I've forgotten when I turned 18. It's quite a while ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But if somebody turns 18 today, do they automatically become a registered voter? Can I walk to a registration center, or can I walk to the IEBC offices and say, I turned 18 today, it's my birthday, register me?
Yes.
You can do that?
You can.
What do you need to register as a voter?
You need your identity card to show them for identification. And
Are identity cards given as a matter of course automatically to anybody on their 18th birthday?
it is a requirement that you have that, but I would say it is a requirement to have an ID.
It's a requirement. Yes, I'm asking the practical aspects because we are dealing with what is practical in this country.
Right.
And this is something that you tackled in the case study, the question of unregistered young people. So you say that once you turn 18, on your 18th birthday, you can get an ID and you can walk into a voter registration center and register?
Yes, when you get to 18 and you are alive to your rights, particularly on the right to vote, and particularly now that we are looking forward to a general election, really you need to walk into the offices, Huduma, for example, and get an ID. Once you
If you
that,
apply
yes.
today for a national identity card, in your experience, how long does it take?
Well, that depends a lot more. I will tell you that you can get it in under a month, depending on how efficient things are. But with the Huduma now, it's much more faster.
So essentially, IEBC would not register anyone who does not have an ID.
They cannot even dare.
So essentially, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics would first require to give their statistics. When young people are 17, the statistics are more useful to the Registrar of Persons than they are to IEBC.
It's all interrelated in there. And I'll tell you, and all that is captured in one of the volumes when you're doing census is one that is called the year, that gives the statistics of each and every other person from under 1 year to the oldest person in there.
Prof,
yes.
I want us to be realistic,
Yeah.
Practical, and sometimes it is good not to live in denial. Do you think there is a problem of registration of young people which affects registration as a voter?
Of course, yes. That's right.
Okay. How are population statistics important in boundary delimitation?
Population statistics is very important in boundary delimitation because of two things. There is a threshold that is required of 165,000 inhabitants that qualifies an area to become a constituency. And without that, then you fall within those protected constituencies, which is unfortunate. So there is a 165, which is a critical number in terms of identifying or demarcating the constituencies.
The Constitution in Article 89 talks about population quota. What is population quota with respect to delimitation of boundaries of electoral units?
Bwana Kimuli, population quota can have two different meanings. The first one is when you're looking at the number of people as they are in a country, then you divide it by the landmass, excluding the water bodies. That's good enough for that. But for purposes of electoral unit, then it is that population divided by the number of electoral units. So you can take the number of people, divide by 290, or divide by the number of wards. That will give you specifically the content of persons within that area.
So one of the considerations IEBC uses is population quota, the number of people. Now, these statistics come from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. That's where you serve.
That's right.
Do you know within what time duration intervals IEBC is required to review boundaries and delimit boundaries of electoral units?
Yes.
What is the time?
It's a minimum of 8 years and a maximum of 12 years.
And when do we undertake our population census?
After every 10 years.
After every 10 years. So, by necessary implication, if IEBC is to rely on population as a benchmark, it would have to rely on the Kenyan National Bureau of Statistics, which only comes through once every 10 years. What would then IEBC do with the obligation to review boundaries in 8 years?
That's interesting, and luckily, if I have to respond to this in the way I understand it, is that now we did our census in 2019, so it's just like a year or two, and our elections are going to be in 2022. That's like 2-3 years after the census. That data is still very fresh. But apart from that, there is annual projections. That data that is available there, especially in the economic survey that KNBS actually publishes every single year. So that will also be another area that IEBC can get fresh data from.
Thank you very much. And our time is up, Prof. But just one last question. This is a one-line answer. When did we first use technology in our elections?
Oh, in the last general election, 2017.
That's the first time.
That's the first time we
Please look into that. Thank you very much, Prof, and all the best. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kimuli. I'll now request Dr. F.S. Abdallah to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Prof, in your case study, under paragraph D, you stated that the commission to evaluate whether the tension between Secretariat and Commissioner is due to overlap of duties or just a misunderstanding, right? The need for a team building between the Secretariat and the Commissioner. Prof, in your opinion, do you think there's an overlap?
In my opinion, I don't think so, Dr. Interestingly. I think because it is all outlined there in the IEBC Act, and every other team needs to stick to their area of jurisdiction, if I may use such words here. What I think is missing is probably the realization and understanding of who does what and where. And Dr. something else that caught my attention when I was preparing for this interview is the unfortunate event that actually we don't have a commission or a platform like equivalent of what we have in SCAC, the State Cooperation Advisory Committee, that actually monitors the activities of the board members. Such a thing is missing, and there is nobody or no organ really regulating this. And I think given the opportunity to advise, it is something that the legislatures really need to start looking at to see whether we can have a regulatory sort of platform for that. It's not there, and that probably, because I even wonder who actually does the inductions.
Good.
Yeah.
Prof, I think we'll come to that, but just for your information, it's the relationship between the commissioners and secretary is very well defined under 11A. Yes. For the effective performance of the function of the commission, the chairperson and members of the commission shall perform their function in accordance with the Constitution, in particular shall be reasonable for the formulation of, be responsible for formulation of policy and statutory of the commission oversight. That's the commissioners, right?
That's correct.
B, the secretariat shall perform the day-to-day administrative functions of the commission and implement the policy and strategy formulation by the commission. So it's very well stated. It's very well stated, yeah? Okay. For maybe other reasons we all could be guessing, or we all could be knowing. Let me give you the opportunity with this research background you have. Maybe you could contribute to them, but please, Prof, I'm going to take you through 6 questions, right? And it'll be very wise for you to use them wisely so we could be, gauged properly, right?
Thank you.
Now, here we go. I know you're the one who should be doing the talking, but in this case, Prof, I will give you the 6, on 15th June 2021, the IEBC launched the 2020-2024 strategic plan, election operations plan. From this strategic plan, the Commission strategic focus is now on 6 KRAs. 6 KRAs. That is the key result areas, right?
Yeah.
Prof, as I've told you, I will give you the 6 areas one by one, so you don't need to guess them.
Oh.
I'll give them to you because we need to see how you could improve, those 6 areas. Please tell this panel as to how, and in your opinion, how best you will approach the same if you become a commissioner at the IEBC, right? Number 1. We'll go one by one, and you've got 2 minutes for each.
Oh.
Strengthening corporate governance. That's the answer you have just been trying to get. The relationship between the commissioners and the secretariats could be because there's not a strong corporate governance. Now come, tell us, how can you strengthen that?
Well, pretty quickly, I would look at the structures, the internal structures that are in the commission, and also look at the ambits within which the commissioners should operate, and outline them in very easy to implement policies, internal policies within the secretariat, so that they are easily implementable. So for me, I would make sure that each and every staff within the secretariat is aware of their role and the ultimate contribution to the mandate of the commission. But at the same time, allow the commissioners, through induction and other trainings, quickly to also understand the role and the importance of oversighting each and every activities of the secretariat, but not to be operationalized, because the commissioners are supposed to oversight at a level. So the user departments, and there are many in IEBC, need to give workable papers that are realistic, time-bound, and I will look at them very quickly to ensure that all the structures in there are done, so the supervision bit of it, and also the ability to understand the different roles that I will implement.
There are 5 more.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Okay.
Number 2 is strengthening the legal framework.
Oh yeah, that's something we'll deal with pretty quickly. There's a lot of litigation that are ongoing. I would quickly, first of all, call the legal team very quickly and assess whether there is need for bringing other people from outside, or just have strengthen the legal capacity of IEBC, but at the same time also consult outside with the possible legal minds that are not necessarily resident in the commission, because probably you might not be able to fund all of them or pay them. But I would strengthen pretty quickly the legal team.
Good. Effective conduct of elections.
Oh yeah, effective conduct of election. This is something I'm close at, and I can give direct support to this because of my expertise in certifying or in understanding the accreditation process of processes. I would look at each and every manual that is in here and find out whether it conforms to the national and international, best practices of the election, and quickly register IEBC pretty quickly for certification by the conformity assessment bodies.
Good. 4, public outreach through the effective voter education. B, strategic partnership collaborations and communications. Need me to repeat, Prof?
I've picked voter education and collaboration, and I think
communication.
Yes. Dr. Abdallah, on this one, I think something that I haven't seen happening, and this is something I would recommend pretty quickly to the Commission, is to have voter education mainstreamed in MDS. As it is right now, we have NTSA mainstreamed, we have HIV mainstreamed in all the MDA's ministries, departments, and agencies, so that this becomes part of the activities that corporations and state agencies and departments should actually undertake the very way we do for NTSA, we do it for HIV, so that there are activities that can enhance the voter education. It's too important that we do voter education. And this is a way that you can have it done without necessarily impacting heavily on the finances.
Mm-hmm. Partnership collaborations?
Partnership collaborations, what I would do here quickly is to first of all look at what is the pool of partnerships that we already so far have, because these are very critical, particularly when it comes to funding bit of it, because we depend on the development partners as well. But given my expertise, I would look at that, go and do an inventory pretty quickly of what is the diversity that we have, are their focus still realigned to what IEBC wants to do, and quickly expand that and interest them more with better even scopes and newer activities that they can quickly synergize and strengthen.
Good. Prof, don't forget the religion-based organization on voters registration.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Number 5, equitable representation.
Yeah, equitable representation is an aspect that, from IEBC point of view, to expedite the processes of delimitation. Because if there are long, conflicted delimitation process, then it means you're not giving people the opportunity really to be represented very well. So I would quickly expedite that process so that every other person feels equitably represented.
Thank you, Prof. The next one, you could take a little more few seconds than that, because you still have got a little few seconds, right? Which is because very, very important is strengthening the strategic operations.
Well, that's it. That's actually the last key results area. The operations need to be effectively organized. It is a time bound that come next year on the 9th August, there will be an election. So you have no room actually to lag on anything. For that, I will strictly have several internal committees, and this worked for us when we were doing the census. I would have a smaller internal committee that will be looking at ICT, another that will be looking at communication, and another one that will be looking at procurement. These are things we did for the census, and it worked so well to monitor and evaluate the processes.
Thank you, Prof.
My pleasure.
And all the best. I hope you're successful, and we'll come and ask you whether it's not easier said than done. All the best.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Dr.
Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdallah. I'll now request Gideon Solonka to ask you some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Prof, you stated that election is a national exercise, and I agree. Currently in the world, we have 22 countries where voting is mandatory. And out of the 22, the only African country is Egypt. And the reason for that is that participation in public life is a national duty. Now, my question is, will you advocate for mandatory voting in Kenya?
I would, in the morning, to insist that let everybody actually go out there and vote. Then they have the right to query.
What will be your reasons for convince Kenyans that mandatory voting is where we should be?
The idea of, you see, what is measured gets done. That is the policy. You would be at a loss, really, to start querying something you never participated in. For me, it is so important that you get the best leaders, and the only way to exercise that sovereign right would be through the ballot. So for me, it will be go ahead and vote, and we ensure that is done. Probably that would change, because there are other people who find themselves, by the virtue that voting is voluntary, they don't go out there and exercise. And some probably they they don't act so, because there are recall clauses, and I've not seen a lot of recall, a lot of recalling, if I may use that word, happening. It's probably because some of the people who are making a lot of noise don't feel any attachment to the leadership, because after all, I didn't vote, and do I really care? It is something we need to look at. It might not be immediate, but it's a conversation that I would open very early in the morning.
And will that infringe a citizen's right of choice not to vote?
You see, leadership and elections, it has caused us a lot of pain in this country, really, Bwana Salonga. And for me, making it mandatory probably is the direction to go in terms of people then taking it seriously and therefore want to participate on it. And because of that, there will be a decision to be done. It might infringe in the currently prescribed, but like you say, it is a discussion that is critical and we can have it. Then, of course, they can also decide at that point whether they want it to be mandatory or not. But personally, I would go for a mandatory voter.
Okay, thank you.
Station, yes.
Now, the IEBC under Section 55B of the Elections Act has power to postpone an election in a constituency, county, or ward for such period as it may consider necessary. Yeah. When can IEBC invoke that provision? Under what circumstances? Give me the 3 instances when it can invoke that provision.
IEBC has that power, that's correct. If there is a lot of violence, IEBC is able to do that. If there is a national calamity that makes it impossible, the IEBC would be able to do that. And again, if there is understanding that there won't be peace and conducting that election will result into violence, again, it will postpone.
Okay. And when will IEBC conduct an election after exercising that power to postpone? What is the period?
Yeah, pretty quickly, within 3 months.
Within?
3 months.
That's what the law says?
Oh, of course not. Because it says it very well as it deems necessary. And that gives them around 3 months to do that, or as deemed necessary. But that's an area I can familiarize myself.
Okay. Yeah. It's at the earliest practicable time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, okay.
Deemed.
Now, do we have, or how many state radios do we have in Kenya?
Well, you go for just KBC.
State televisions?
State-owned, IBC. Not IBC, the KBC.
What about state televisions?
Also KBC.
KBC?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, what does the law say regarding airtime by state radio and television during the campaign period?
That those state-owned radios and television stations need to offer equitable distribution of airtime to all the contenders without bias.
Without bias?
Without bias.
Okay. Thank you. Now, my last question will be, in the recent past, there's been a debate on whether the the post-electoral system is an appropriate electoral system for Kenya.
I didn't get that, sir.
Do you know our electoral system in Kenya?
Yeah, I do.
It is the first past the post-electoral system. That is what we have.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's what you meant.
Yes. So what is your understanding of that system? And what are the other alternative electoral systems available?
Allow me to familiarize myself with that further. So please, let's pass that one.
We pass that one?
Yeah, okay. I'll come back to it.
Thank you. Now, define for me this term. What is an integrated electronic electoral system?
An integrated electronic electoral system is this a platform which brings together the electronic voter registration, electronic voter identification, and electronic, and the voter or the result transmission. There are 3 aspects in there.
Correct. And what is a referendum question?
A referendum question is this yes and no question where the public or citizens are expected to vote on an issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Solonka. I'll now request Madam Elizabeth Mayo to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Chair. Once more, good morning, Professor Dwar.
Good morning, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I'd like to refer to your case study, and it is on the issue of stakeholder engagement. So one of the responses you gave us, especially on stakeholder engagement strengthening, is that the PR team to strengthen their acts, I'm quoting from your response here, the PR team to strengthen their acts to reclaim the image of the Commission in the face of agitated stakeholders. Please tell us how you will do that if you're appointed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, IEBC, much as it has done a lot of good things, unfortunately has a baggage of public opinion that probably they didn't do a good job. But I've familiarized myself with the reports following that election, and interestingly, it was scored higher by the observers, the reports that I've seen, meaning that the aspect that is now left to be dealt with is to ensure that the story that the IEBC has must be told out there in the right way. I would quickly do what we did in KNBS to strengthen our internal communication department with an outsourced component which will focus on publicity alone during an event like the general election.
Okay, thank you, Professor. As you talk about sourcing the components, please remember we are having issues of inadequate funds in IBC.
I'm aware.
So the growing cost of elections and demands from citizens for effective engagement and participation create pressures for innovative electoral reforms. You've talked a lot about that. So what reforms would you propose for the Commission to enhance stakeholder engagement and voter education?
For me, I would, for the stakeholder engagement and voter education, like I've said, the quick one would be to try and use already existing MDS to try and mainstream the voter education. Very, very important for me. But now, between now up next year, before that happens, because we have an election to carry out, I would increase, first of all, avenues through which the messages go. And I would have a targeted messages approach, where if it's going to the youth, I make messages that are sensitive and targeting the youth. If it's heading to the elderly, I also make messages that are going towards that direction. The idea would be to make it simple, make that messaging accurate and accessible. I would do that pretty fast.
Any other reform you'll bring on board?
Another reform that I would bring on board is to look the media, which is a very, very critical aspect, because the media, the role that it has in terms of sensitizing the public would be very critical. So for me, I would quickly look for a very important section in the media called the Editors Guild and bring them on board, because they are the people who regulate what goes in and what goes out. And that's a critical aspect that I would bring on board pretty quickly for communication and for getting the information out there to the media.
Okay, what kind of reform will you bring in place to ensure that voter education is effectively carried out in the remote areas?
Yes, in the remote areas, I would work with the people on the ground. IEBC, luckily, Madam Mayor, has a lot of presence, and that is a strength that I feel can be tapped very heavily. We have the 290 offices, county offices. We have also 47 constituency offices, and we have 47 county offices. Those offices a very good platform for instituting a lot of messaging. I would work with I would attack barazas with messages. I would get to the social media, and this is an area that is very, very critical, particularly for the youth. I would look at the influencers because the youth listen a little bit more to their influencers. I would bring all that on board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Professor, smart and new technology facilitate better and more transparent approaches to elections management and should be explored to facilitate greater confidence in the outcome of elections. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I do.
How will you achieve that if you are appointed commissioner?
Smart
and new technologies.
In the strategic 3-point strategic thoughts that I have, I talked about re-engineering the technology services in the commission, and here I'm looking at how do you strengthen the digital platform to be able to do efficient voter registration, voter identification, and also to maximize on the speeds and networks that we have. Personally, I would quickly take advantage of the digital framework that we already have. The country is already ready for taking up of technologies because we did it in the KNBS census that we did. And by the way, Madam Mayor, the country is ready, and there is everything to support a new technology. Mm-hmm. It might interest you to know that in the digital, in the last census, the gadgets that we used, the digital platform that we used, was assembled locally here from Jomo Kenyatta and from Moi University, locally assembled. The system that we used to generate the questionnaires was done by staff members at the KNBS. And actually the system that was used for transmission was also developed by a staff member. There was fear at the beginning of hacking and all that. But they made sure that the firewalls, the server, and the system was ably protected. And Madam Mayor, let me say this, and it's personal really. There is no any justification. Sometimes I hear people talk about how will be election rigging and all that. It is good to say that, but it is doable. We did it just the other day in the census. How do the banks succeed in ensuring that your money is safe there and you withdraw it to your phone just by an SMS and probably a PIN number? What is more important, if you are able to deposit your own hard-earned money through a mobile phone and it goes in there and you are comfortable with it, where did we lose the battle? How come that when it comes to the election of just transmitting numbers, and allow me to be simplistic a little bit, just transmitting numbers that 243 people voted in this particular area, take a photo, because that is what actually, we need to get to a point of demystifying technology. And because we did it, I have the might and the patience and even the ability to explain. And this is how I would do it. Probably we need to tell people what was exactly the problem in 2017, because we hear a lot of what is really transmission. It was just get to a Form 34A, take a photo of it, send it to the server so that at the tallying center, the other person is able to pull that data, to reconcile, to make also another Form 34B, and then fire it up to the National Tallying Center. You do it to the National Tallying Center and also the Constituency Tallying Center. That thing is not as difficult as we want it to look. And therefore, for me, I would want to demystify that and tell people that, yes, we are ready. We have the country dealing with Huduma. And there's something else probably we are not taking advantage of, is the Huduma. It is a very good platform, especially because it is consolidating databases. Passport, ID, birth certificate, death certificates. You will realize, Madam Mayor, that the two things that we require as IEBC for voter registration really will be to capture the fingerprints and the face. Then link it and then start petitioning it into where should somebody vote. Is it in this polling station or the other one? The Huduma Kenya, the Huduma number thing is very articulate. It has already captured that, and all we will require as IEBC is just to have that data, pull it to our depository, because you have to have a sub data, because only IEBC can register voters by law. And therefore, the idea is you will pick that information from the depository of Huduma. Once it comes here, you just tie it now to the electoral units in terms of polling station, the constituency that it falls, in the county, and all that to generate the one register that we have. Thank you, ma'am.
So, Professor, in your view, the country is ready for use of technology in election?
The country is ready.
Yeah.
All we need to start right now is making frameworks and platforms so that we can sample this in 2027 and go and have a blended electoral, voting in 2032.
So the country is ready, but not for 2022?
No, not for 2022.
Okay.
For 2022, whatever we have right now just needs to be strengthened. It's good enough, especially on the section around the transmission. That's all. And it is doable because all you need to do, like last time, Madam Mayor, I looked at those reports and noticed that the challenge was the transmission and it was attributable to the network. When you do a good mapping of the network, which was done, you are able to identify the sections that have a problem. Early enough, we still have 12 months. And then what is also very interesting that was never ably utilized, that IEBC has, is the purchase of what we are calling satellite phones. It is already exists. I found out that they exist. These are phones that can operate outside the network. So you don't really get yourself struggled or compromised just because you don't have a network. And therefore, when you do a good mapping, you are able to identify those areas and then use those deploy those particular satellite phones to those areas.
Okay, Professor, given a chance to implement some of these reforms you are telling us,
yes,
what are some of the key challenges you think might actually affect your successful implementation of what you have put down as reforms?
The challenges are likely to be there. And of course, when you outline some of these thoughts, you need to also think about the possible bottlenecks. For me, I look at the finance as part of one of the challenges. I look at the legal framework because as it is right now,
how is finance a challenge?
A challenge in the sense that you will have to train, you will have to procure this technology in terms of software, hardware, and even the networking of it.
What if finance is there? You have adequate finance?
If we have adequate finance, I love that. We will implement it as soon as possible. But I'm knocking off the finance off the list. Litigation would be an area of concern.
You explain what you mean by litigation.
Yes.
Because I want the panel members to understand.
Yes, there will be people who certainly will want to challenge that and say, hey, why are you bringing for us probably a technology? And some of us assuming, and with a lot of humility, somebody would say, I don't have both my hands, and therefore, what else are you going to use to identify me? Okay, that is when now we think about other ways of biometrics, like the voice, like the earlobes, by the way, is also another biometric, which is interesting. So I look at the finance, which you have talked, we've knocked off the list. I look at litigation as part of it. And another challenge would be the training bit of it, because it will take a little bit of time to get our people to believe on it. But more importantly, I think, and this is critical, is to get the public perception and buy-in that it is okay and it is doable and it is okay, your votes are right. Those are areas I would quickly look at.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
My pleasure.
What, in your view, do you think is the importance of responsible reporting in elections?
In regards to the media, right?
Responsible reporting, yeah.
Yes, it is. You see, depending on how the media or the reporter wants to project, and this is an area that I find very interesting. Media is there to sell or to disseminate news, and they're in the business of news. And it is important that the generators of news, because what the media gets out there is what they have also found there. I'm yet to find a media house that is fabricating even the banning of probably a house. It requires a lot of IT knowledge to even Photoshop a banning of a house and all that. So if a media practitioner goes out there and there is violence, they will capture whatever they have seen. The idea here would be to train them, and that's why I brought in the Editors Guild, that when it gets to that point, what do you do as a responsible journalist? And Madam Mayor, one thing that I find interesting, especially with the reporting, we are so good in voter education, we are so good in preparation and telling everybody, just go out there and vote on the right day. But immediately the voting starts, we start imagining results, which is interesting. But at that particular point, we have so many commentators in all these televisions talking everything, trying to postulate numbers, I engage with ideas. But something that I think is missing is something I call in my strategy patriotic dialogue. Because we have been here before, we have been here for some time. We've seen how the election of 2007 was, 2013 and 2017. Clearly, we now know we have some ideas of what we can do. A patriotic dialogue, from where I sit, is this brings together people whose etymological pedigree is beyond reproach. People, you bring the faith-based, get us, and they exist in this country and beyond. People, even the retired presidents, if they are still there and energetic and able to comment nicely. So that their story is to tell them, guys, we are going to have this happening. Kenya is here with us, and we must make sure that our voters, the voting is going to be peaceful and everything else. We do it, though, still, but once we have started banning, so it becomes like proactive, is when you hear people start throwing placard, okay, Kenya is one, people don't ban people. For me, I will put it as a strategy, patriotic dialogue, thought through, people who will form part of that team, identified well enough, in advance and given the opportunity so that they also think through how to narrate and how to bring the country together at that point. It is something that is missing, and I will institutionalize
Okay, thank you, Professor. Time is not on our side.
Thank you
but
so much.
Just in 1 minute, please tell us, what are the rights and privileges of the media?
First of all, around the voting area, they have a right to be accredited and be available in the voting polling center. They have that right to information, right to actually broadcast it, right to access the polling center. I've said that. Right to distribute that information out there, and right to security during that time. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I'll now request the Vice Chair to ask you a few questions.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Professor, in our history, electoral history, and I don't want to go very far back, but I want to go to the 90s. We've had periods of election-related violence, which has led to serious upheavals in the country. And quite often, these major upheavals even threaten the security of the state. Sometimes even the existence of the state is threatened. Now, we've had problems in 1992, 1997, 2007, it's a major one. Quite often, the issues that cause the violence, elections are just a trigger. But the issues that cause, the underlying causes of these upheavals and violence are completely different. So elections just triggers. Could you mention some of the underlying causes of this kind of violence? And how as a country we can deal with them? Thinking of 92, 97, 2007 especially.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and I agree. I share in that pain like you do, Vice Chair. And we have seen really progressive violence in this country every time there is an election. Part of the reason for this, I would say, would be, I have a number of areas I can touch on this. Ethnic politics. where parties, many of them, start by coalescing around their tribes, and when they feel they're good enough, they have galvanized their tribes, is when they think to start expanding. You would look at the aspect of winner takes it all, where you get that almost 45-50, the variance between the winner and the immediate loser is too close, and that brings the temptation of feeling that it should have been me. And of course, there is the lack of the culture which does not allow somebody to accept defeat gracefully. I would look at the convenience of precedence, where you say, come on, there is no election without violence, really, because we haven't had any in 1992, in 2007, 2013, and 2017. We've said there is the confidence that comes with that precedence that also needs to be dealt with, that indeed we can have a good election without necessarily having that. So that is what I'm calling convenience of precedence. And also just our build-up, the campaign itself. You would hear, and this is something, again, we have to deal with, before the elections, you can see how charged the country is. So if we are able to look at all this, then we will be able to design mechanisms, and that is to respond to your second part of the question. How do we design mechanisms to mitigate this kind of behavior or circumstance or phenomenon? I would say in terms of ethnic politicking, there is luckily a very good outlined procedures of how political parties need to be formulated, and it speaks to the governing body, the representation, whether it is gender sensitive, whether there is a national outlook, does it convey just religious or cultural. There is a very nice outlined stuff. I think that is where we probably need to start thinking, and this I'm now looking at a strategy on top of my mind. How do we enhance the fabric of a political party and to be beyond that particular tribe? This would be something very interesting. Like we do in law, we can even put a percentage that if it is 50% from this particular area, that should be dealt with, and that will require a bit more of legislation. Winner takes it all is an aspect that will require legislation as well. That how do you, and I think without looking as if I'm supporting or not, the BBI was trying to speak to that how do we make voter temperament a bit reduced by making the contenters a little comfortable, even in the laws, because nobody gets home without something. And of course, the history or the convenience of precedents of violence is something we can just strengthen the law and tell guys, no, we appreciate that your person has lost, unfortunately for reasons that you know, but for us is that please don't get out there and burn stuff. And again, my idea of patriotic dialogue comes in at that particular point to lower the temperaments. Thank you, my Vice Chair.
There's one major cause, and especially 1992, 97, 2007, there's one major underlying cause. Do you remember, are you aware of the Kriegler Commission, findings of the Kriegler Commission?
Oh yes, Kriegler, yeah, that's right. It was following the National Accord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it said in terms of the major causes of violence?
I can lump that in a single or so sentence and say it was largely on the electoral processes that was very critical.
Sorry, the Waki Commission. The Waki Commission. Both commissions worked on the issues that came out of 2007. The Kriegler Commission focused on the process. The Waki Commission focused on the electoral violence. And it mentioned the key causes. Yeah, if you can just highlight. Yeah.
Well, I thought I touched it a little bit, Vice Chair, particularly on the winner, the aspect. It implicated the aspect of winner takes it all. That you.
Yeah, that was one.
Yes.
What was the other?
Another, again, I also probably hinted onto it, but the recurrence of violence that has made people become a little stubborn or comfortable with violence.
Okay, let me just, for the sake of, so that we can move forward. Land, historically, justice is related to land.
That
was a major cause, 92, 97, 2007, a major underlying cause. Now, I'm touching on these issues to try and bring you to the point that, I was looking at your beautiful diagram, the framework here.
Thanks.
It's great when it comes to solving the internal, what I would call institutional related issues, touching on elections, the management of elections. But the external issues that touch on governance, that have to do with governance, the way the country is governed and the way we govern ourselves, are not reflected in this nice framework here. So you could have all this and still have an election failure because of the external factors. So how do you bring that into considerations when you're looking at how to manage elections in this country?
Yeah, that's right. Part of the major thing that happened, and I was drawing that, my feeling when I was making that framework of thought based on the previous elections. And one of the bits that I gave a lot of premium was the bit about the disputed results. And that is why I focused on that. But again, we must appreciate the fact that the process of delivering a credible election is multi-sectoral. And apart from the IEBC as a commission, we have political parties in here. We have, of course, that's the politicians themselves, the candidates in here. We have the security bit of it, where we have seen security, and like in the Kiamba, my vice chair, where we have information that the administrative officers were seen hovering around the station. If you look at the government, in terms of also the misuse of office in terms of resources, that's also another area that can affect that. But all this said and done, if we are able to uphold the tenets as prescribed within the Code of Conduct, we will be good, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Professor, you moving from, I'm coming now to your area, you're a decorated scientist.
Ashkoro.
With patents to your name, awards.
Thank you.
And working in an area that right now in this country, actually not just in this country, but in the world, is really needed. Why would you want to leave the laboratory and research to go to a public policy arena, which is open-ended, where sometimes you can't even count your achievements? What is the motivating factor?
Thanks, but I worry, and I agree with you that much as there are animations that are attached to my academic and research career, people grow, and growth comes with the desire to serve in more unfamiliar territories. For me, I feel that IEBC gives me that opportunity now to ably wade into unfamiliar territory that tickle my fancy. And what is important for me here is the desire to demystify the camaraderie and the whole hula-baloo around elections, because it can be done. And my motivation is because I have conducted, with the team and all the management and board members working and that I worked with, a successful national exercise like census, election is just one of it. And therefore, it is also possible. And because we've done it, we have technologies ready, we have the country ready, we have the legislation. For me, my drive is to demystify and at least for once have an election that we will attribute to other external factors, but not IEBC.
Now, something that is key to IEBC, independence of the commission, and you mentioned it in earlier, when you were responding to my earlier question, the external interference. Interference from the executive component of government has been an issue all along, in almost every election that has been mentioned as a factor. If you are to be a commissioner, how would you protect the independence of the commission from interference by state actors?
Well, again, an excellent question. It is true that if you are a commissioner in a commission that is handling matters election in this country, clearly you have every aspect of yourself being tested. And for me, when that time comes, and if I'm privileged to be given this opportunity, one is to revert very quickly to what are the values as ascribed to the IEBC. I resort to my integrity, the rule of law, and the independence, and of course, teamwork. I will insist and persuade fellow commissioners to see adherence to law as one of the fundamental attributes that must be upheld at all time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. I'll now ask Reverend Mutie to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Chair. Professor, I'm beginning with a follow-up question. You earlier said that, in your view, it should be mandatory that people should vote. I'm just concerned, what should be done to those that do not vote?
That's a good one. The mandatoriness here does not really require to be followed very closely with a punishment or a penalty. The mandativeness here would speak to the importance of why every other person needs to vote. Because as it is right now, we are 47 million Kenyans. And of course, minusing the numbers of the people who are not within the voting bracket, the number is out there. So it trickles your interest to get to know what happened to these guys. They are out here and they live in this country. The desire to have a good leader must be actually coupled or linked very closely with the desire to also choose the best one. So for me, I would make it mandatory, but not necessarily making it punitive.
Okay. Now, we highly regard our higher institutions of learning. But there are some concerns that have come to the public about the practices that have really consistently hounded our institutions of higher learning. We have heard of cases of fake certificates. We have heard of issues of, sex for marks, for grades, and the many others. I don't know whether you've heard about them or you've come across.
We live here, Father. Yes.
Oh, so okay. So now, having worked in such institutions, and now you want to come to IEBC, how will you manage such internal integrity issues at IEBC?
Right. Thank you, Father. I'm happy that you are ready giving me an opportunity to leave that environment that has got, say, fake certificates and sex for marks, and taking me to IEBC at least, where those two don't seem to be a major problem. And if I talk to it generally, then you're probably alluding to how do you handle the sexual harassment, and probably in terms of fake certificates, how do you deal with integrity, or your integrity when you are approached, if I may refresh. There are policies already in place in all organizations right now that should be able to handle this. For me, as a commissioned CMA member and in St. Mary's Catholic Church in Sabaki, Mlolongo Parish, one thing I believe in my Creator, and because of that faith alone, I will clearly score dismally attempts to try and push me that direction. But in terms of other integrity, for example, when somebody wants to attempt you, there is something that I believe in, that how you project yourself will inform how the public interacts with you. And I have had an opportunity to be in such positions before, and even now in KNBS, where we ran a census of 20 billion Kenya shillings, and there hasn't been any scandal or any misappropriation reported, to the best of my knowledge for now. Not to say that there were no attempts, but to say that we stuck to our virtues, and that is what I'll bring back to IEBC as well.
Corruption is a vice that is rampant in the public sector. I hear you say that you've handled volumes of money.
Yes, we did.
What do you think makes the public sector more vulnerable to corruption?